Hey everyone, episode number 3. This is going to be an impactful one for me because this is where I need some help. As I mentioned in episode number 1 with Mr. Greg Dickerson, I have a mindset of a W-2 employee. I own that. It's just who I am. And Greg doesn't. He's always been a natural entrepreneur. So I wanted to ask him, we're starting at the beginning of the year, what advice Greg has for W-2 employees that now recognize they want to do a side hustle or they want to go that direction. So kind of open-ended, but let's welcome Greg to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, Michael. Good to be back.
Yeah. So this is a weakness of mine, right? It's kind of thinking like an entrepreneur, acting like an entrepreneur. What kind of advice would you have? Let's assume you're talking to a W-2 employee, right? They sailed through 2020, but they've realized that a job is not, right? A W-2 job is not as secure as it should be or once was, and they want to start building a side hustle. What kind of advice do you have for them? Right, they're going to stay employed at least for a little while.
Mhm.
What kind of advice do you have for them? Or maybe you want to ask me some questions because maybe my question's too wide open.
Yeah, so it's going to be different for everybody in different stages. But if you want to stay working for a while till you get to a point, you got to start with replacing your income. So you got to figure out, how am I going to replace my income perpetually and permanently? So you want to start with that, and then you reverse engineer that goal. So then you have to understand, what are my knowledge, skills, and abilities? What can I trade for income, for value? So, then you need to understand that, and what's that worth in the marketplace? What are people willing to pay for what I have to offer? So, you have to offer services, you have to solve problems, and the bigger the problem, the better the service, the more opportunity there is. So you have to look at those things. And then you need to understand that, it is a business. So a side hustle is a business. It's not a hobby. It's not a side hustle. It's a business. So you have to approach it from that mindset, which means you need a plan. Doesn't need to be 20 pages with, forecasts and market studies and all that. A little one pager, that starts with, how much do you need to make? How much is what you have to offer worth? How much of that do you need to replace that? So that's where it starts. As far as becoming an entrepreneur and becoming self-employed, the thing that you have to understand about that is what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes. You have to know what it is you want. You have to be willing to take the risk, and you have to be in a position where you can take the risk. So depending on where people are in their lives and their families and their obligations, may or may not be able to take that risk or have the desire to take that risk. For me, it's just kind of how I was wired. I started young, and what I've learned now is you can start over at any age. It doesn't really matter. You can never be too young. You can never be too old. You can be too late.
Yeah.
You could get to
Yeah.
the end of your life and wish you'd have done something or tried something, so what's cool is that everybody can do, I don't care who you are, you can do a side thing, a side business. I wouldn't call it a hustle to do a side business.
Okay.
If you want to, because we all have extra time to do something. So it depends on, how bad you want it and what it is you're after, and what that side business is. So those are some of the things you want to think about: is where are you now? What are your resources? Are you willing and able to take that risk? Are you willing and able to commit to the success of that? And what are you willing to exchange for value to replace your current income?
That's awesome. So I want to peel this back a little bit and kind of sprinkle in some Gary Vaynerchuk. I assume you know who Gary V is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of the things he talks about, he calls it a side hustle. We'll call it a business. Yeah. I want to stay appreciative to both.
He's just a hustler, just get out there and hustle, and that's what I've been my whole life. I'm a hustler. I work hard.
That's awesome. So one of the things he is very fond of saying is, do work your 8 to 5, your 9 to 6, whatever it is, but then come home and build your side hustle around something you're very passionate about. Whether that's, he often jokes, I don't care if it's peanut butter, whatever it is, right? Find out what that is for you, become the expert in that, and then a business will form from that. How does that sit with you when you hear things like that?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, there's a market for almost anything and everything. The question is, how big is the market? So,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, generally it's going to be easier if you're passionate about something, but again, it's got to be knowledgeable, and it's got to be information or a product or service that somebody's willing to pay for. So, with the world of YouTube, sure, you could take peanut butter and make a YouTube channel out of it and earn money.
Right.
Teach people how to make peanut butter, how to cook with peanut butter, how to do different things with peanut butter. So you just have to think about, if peanut butter is your thing, what's the market potential of that peanut butter, and
Right.
what's the minimum viable product to get started with that? So I think that's what he's kind of talking about at a macro level.
Right.
that you can break down to what I just said, very practical. It really doesn't matter what it is. People, especially in today, you can sell your knowledge and your information like you're doing in your book, like I have with my courses and coaching and things. We're selling, the knowledge and wisdom that we've gained over the years of how to do something. So there's a market for that now more than ever
Mhm.
because of the world we live in. So, online e-commerce is the, quickest, easiest way to get that going. He also teaches, buying and selling stuff and, go to yard sales, buy this, put it on
Yeah.
eBay, you know,
Flipping
I
stuff.
mean,
Yeah.
my dad used to do that. He had his little eBay side business that, he'd go buy different things and sell them and, go to yard sales and stuff. So, I
Nice.
mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do different things. Depends on how much you need to make and what you want to make. But, you got to be careful with following your passion because, maybe there are some things there's absolutely no market for, but in this day and age, it seems like there's almost a market for everything.
Yeah. I think it's, you're right. You got to make sure how deep the market is, how wide it is. But I really do think the key is passion is one thing, but you've got to become, the, a, I don't know, expert's very loose term, but become that person, right? If you, again, just to
You
pick
got to
on,
be skilled. You
yeah,
got to have some skills. If you if you can't play golf and you can't break 100, don't teach golf lessons on the internet just because you're passionate about golf. You got
exactly.
to be a scratch golfer,
Yeah.
or somebody who's close to it. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to teach cooking, or if you want to teach people how to paint or sell your artwork or sell your, it's got to taste good. It's got to look
Yep.
good. It's got to be something
Absolutely.
somebody wants. So yeah, you got to have some skills.
Yes, but again, let's go back to that entrepreneur or that W-2 employee, right? They got through 2020. It was a rough year. They were always nervous
Mhm.
about their job being let go. They have a passion. Let's not say peanut butter. Let's say it's real estate, or it's, maybe it's a bakery, something that's a viable business. What kind of advice what would you ask them to make sure they're ready to kind of give it a go? I mean, what kind
Yeah.
of advice or questions would you ask?
So same thing I told my kids when, my kids were like, "Hey, give me money to start a business." I'm like, "Okay, well, when you can tell me what it costs to rent a space, what your licensing costs are, your business licensing requirements and costs, how much it costs to, run that operation, which food costs, labor costs, bakery, for example,
Mhm.
what's required, how are you going to make it, who's going to do the cooking because you've never baked or maybe you have." So at the end of the day, it comes back to that educating yourself. I get a lot of people, like I had a guy one time, looking for money to open a bagel shop, never even worked in a restaurant
Wow.
and never made a bagel in his life. And he wants to go open a bagel shop, and compete with, other bagel shops out there thinking that, I don't know, so you got to, and he couldn't even tell me how much the lease would cost, this, that, and the other, the build out, what equipment's required, what are the electrical requirements for the equipment that you're putting in, what is your gas requirements, how much water do you need? Do you need a dishwasher? What's the health department requirements? Do you have to get certified? I mean, when you can tell me all of those things, then you're ready. But if you're outside and you're having a cookout and you're having friends over and everybody's raving about your ribs or your coleslaw or your cookies that you make, and they say, "Man, you should open a restaurant," you know, but you don't know the first thing about food, liquor, labor, any of that kind of stuff, how it works, the numbers of the business, how many dollars per square foot do you need to do for the unit economics to even work out? What are unit economics?
Yeah.
You don't even know those things. Just because people say, "Hey, you should open a restaurant," doesn't mean they're even going to come when you open that restaurant, and that's where a lot of people go wrong. So you got to know your business, you got to have the skills,
Very
you got to
cool.
know your numbers.
Yeah, got to know your numbers. I think that's a great place to end it. I appreciate your time, man. This has been a great 3 episodes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Thank you.